Hello, what's up guys? This is Jouni Juurella from Joensuu, Finland, and from Floorball Made Simple back again with yet another video, and today we will focus on defending outnumbered situations such as 4 versus 3, 3 versus 2, and 2 versus 1 situations. And this video was also one of your hopes in those comment sections down below, and we will yet again keep our promise and deliver. So please keep on hoping and making recommendations of the content, so we will fulfill those. Okay, but let's go on. But before we do so, yet again, another mandatory YouTube sellout. Get your teammates and colleagues on board with us. Our follower and subscriber numbers have been increasing lately. Thank you very much for that. But we want even more of you guys to jump into our ship right now. If you like these training tips, try to get your teammates watching our videos and tell them to subscribe as well. So if they subscribe, they will automatically get a notification when new content arrives, and so they will be more searching info on their own individual improvement, and by doing so, they will improve faster. You will get better teammates around you. Because the amount of time spent on individual improvement and looking for information, whether you're a coach or a player, is the teleporting button that will boost your development. And if the coaches share these videos to their own players, the players start as well to search for more information on their improvement, and they get those individual training tips and even practices also. And if you tell about our channel in your club, you have more coaches in your club that have this individual drive to improve themselves. And the time spent on floorball, thinking about it, improving on floorball outside your team practices is the key acceleration button for individual improvement. And that is a fact. But now to what all you've been waiting for. The info on the defense. Defending should always happen through principles, and by this I mean that even if you would have the perfect, optimal number calculation or number of that formation in the field, you still might not defend quite well. So the formation, is it 1-2-2, 2-2-1, 2-1-2, whatever, that is not the case right here. It is more about principles on what you are trying to logically achieve on the field. That defines the success. So you should always have very simple and clear principles that every player in the field and the goalies as well agree, commit to them, and then understand all of those principles. It is important, especially when we're talking about those outnumbered situations, the role of the goalie gets emphasized. So the goalies need to express their own opinion on how those situations are played, so they will be understanding what we're trying to achieve and they will commit. It is always about covering the most dangerous players and areas on the field first. So it is not about the structure, it is about the most threatful spaces that we need to close at first. And you will always, when you're defending an outnumbered situation, you will always have to leave something for the goalie, so that needs to be very clear and agreed upon the whole team. Take into account on which actions the goalie is best on taking on. Is his or her strength on taking direct shots? Is he or her good on coming forward from the goal and facing a player that's trying to drive to the net? Or does the goalie want to take those horizontal cutting passes and move more in the sideways motion? Because that has a huge effect on how the other players are playing in that outnumbered situation. Always position yourself inside first, which means the ball and your net. Always inside. If you are outside, it means that the player is above you. The player that you're trying to mark is above you and nearer to the goal than you are. And the priorities progress like this, in this order, on outnumbered situations. First, slow them down. If the player has the ball, slow his or her pace down. Then drive the player into a smaller angle, out from the big waters and towards the smaller waters in the field. Then, once the player is in those narrower angles, stiff pressure to the player, and the last part is intercepting or getting the ball away from them. So if you try to jump right in without any patience to that interception part, you might play yourself out, and thus you are outside of the game, not inside. Then defending a 4 versus 3 outnumbered situation. These might occur in many phases of the play. By what I mean is that usually these come from the situations where you are unorganized or have been attacking or defending too bravely, and many players have played themselves out of those situations. And so there will be a 4 versus 3. This is rather easy to defend because there are so many passing options for the attacking team, which makes attacking in that situation harder, and there are more defenders occupying the spaces. But this is a more complex thing. This relates always to your defensive system that you're using. So there is no absolute truth on how you must always defend this. You need to always take into account of how should your defensive system cope in such situation. A 4 versus 3 should never break through an organized defense or a forward check, but if it does, you need to track as a coach and as a player, where does that extra player come to the situation? So there is 4 of the others and there is 3 of you. Where did that extra player come to the situation? So where is the leaking point? To which players are they trying to create an overload? So which of those, your 3 players, has 2 players near them? And which of those players are most dangerous in that overload? So which are those that you need to take care of first? And back checking, or other words, back pressure, and side checking or side pressure, either take away the overload situation or make the overload situation even worse. And by this I mean that if your players are good on tracking their players, that they can find that who is the player that I need to chase down now, and they are able to first provide good back pressure, and then when they get up to him or her, they can provide the side pressure. Then the probability of your team conceding a goal decreases. If, in the other hand, the back pressure or side pressure is lacking or a bit lazy, the situation will be harder to defend and it will be worse. A 4 versus 3 can also come out of misbalanced offense. So you are attacking too eagerly, which creates the 4 versus 3. So it might open if you are attacking with a poor defensive balance on the attacking play. It might open from, for example, from offensive zone offense that is too eager and in bad balance. Or it can even open up from a counter attack where the ball is lost during the counter attack somewhere along the way. So every counter attack should always proceed to the goal. Always it needs to end up in the offensive zone. It cannot end anything in between. 4 versus 3 might open even from a high pressing moment, and then if it opens up in any of these cases that I described, you need to recognize the leaking points. What is the leaking point where the advantage comes into play for the opponent? How are your players positioned in the moment of losing the ball? So that creates a situation. Where does the extra player come from? What kind of 4 versus 3 overload the opponent gets, and how their players are positioned in the beginning when that 4 versus 3 is starting. which of your players can recover the situation by tracking down and chasing down the players. So even if it is a 4 versus 3, you need to find out who are the players that can chase up their players and create a 4 versus 4 from the situation. And in order to track down those players, they need to know that who is the player that needs to provide the back and side pressure in order to get it to a 4 versus 4 situation, and to which of the opponents he or she needs to apply the side pressure. And here is just one example on how you can identify the leaking point. So there's a picture where the blue team has been attacking in the offensive zone, and then they are trying to create that counter press on their defense, and the opposing team has gained the ball, the black team, and they are trying to break the press. They are breaking the press in that kind of formation, so they have 3 players low, 1 forward little lower on the pitch, and 1 in the deep area. So they are stretching the field. And you have 2 players in that position in this precise picture pressing 1 player, which is the reason why the overload 4 versus 3 is formed. So the responsibilities in such situation could be like this. The lowest players pick up the most dangerous options. And the players that have played themselves out of the situation track down the nearest of the players that is unmarked. And then begin by back checking, so you're trying to chase the player, and once you have tracked and covered the player, then the side check. So try to cut in between the net and the player. Here we have an approaching 4 versus 3 situation that is broken through your organized forward check. This should never happen, but it sometimes may happen on the field. If those happen, those responsibilities of who takes care of which player need to be very clear. So the blue team is forward checking with a W formation, and the black team is attacking by leaving 3 players to open up the game and 2 players high on the pitch. In the picture, the bottom player, is playing a pass to the left side receiver in the wide areas, and then the bottom player moves without the ball, cuts without the ball towards the center line. So this way, as you see, there's a box shape drawn around your center player, and your center player will have a 2 versus 1 overload. First of all, the center player needs to be sure that what he or she needs to be doing in that situation. Should they remain in the center and get that threatening player without the ball, attacking without the ball from the center, or do they go mirroring out to the sideboard to the player carrying the ball? Responsibilities need to be very clear. The lowest 3 players pick up the most dangerous option first. Leave something for the goalie, and goalie needs to know what they have, what the field players have left to them. Top forward, track down the extra player. Back or side checking to that player. So you can, for example, agree that which of those players the center is tracking and which belongs to the top forward, because the top forward, if your player is just running without the ball through you and going towards the goal, you just cannot stand still and expect for the lowest players to take care of those players, because that will be a 4 versus 3 situations. One way is that your top forward plays player to player and sort of man-oriented, follows up the player, and then your center goes to the sideline. Other way of putting it, your top forward there starts to chase down the player that is carrying the ball from the outside flank, and center remains in the center and covers that. But you need to agree to these things and these responsibilities if that sort of situation is about to break. Who is responsible of what player, And if you have some sort of switching points where you want to switch the players, that needs to be very clearly instructed as well. Then a few words about defending a 3 versus 2 overload. This is a little more difficult one than that 4 versus 3 because there is more space and less defenders defending on it. But it's not really a 3 versus 2 situation because you have 2 defenders in the situation that have one player to mark, and then the goalie has a responsibility of a 1 player. So it is sort of a 3 versus 3 situation when you take into account that the goalie is also an active member of that situation. Yet again, always cover the worst positions first that can create the most threat, most dangerous places at first. Then, the one that is defending against the player with the ball, drive the player with the ball to the outer flanks. What has an impact on that is your body directions. Are you going full speed facing the player, or is your body tilted in a way that you direct the player to the sideboard? Angles where you approach from, do you go straight away to them or do you curve a little bit, driving them to the outside? Where your stick is pointed in the moment. Is your stick needs to be doing something, but you need to be sure what should you do with your stick in the moment. And you need to be close enough in the 1 versus 1 situation to force the player to the outside flank. If you're only dropping down, you are allowing the space for the player with the ball. When you're defending against the player with the ball, you should at least slow them down when they are with the ball, so more players have time to track their own responsibility players, and the 3 versus 2 situation can turn out to be a 3 versus 3. Almost never rush into 1 versus 1 situation and play yourself out of the situation, so you will not be inside, but you would go outside of the situation. And you need to agree with the goalie who they want to face. Most often the goalies want to get the farthest player away from the goal who is in the narrowest corner or angle in the field. And many goalies want to see the players passing a horizontal pass and then get the player that's shooting the one-timer from that, but you need to agree that with your goalie who he or she wants to face. And in the last clip we saw that there was a 3 versus 2 turnover coming, so it was a difficult situation. It looks like almost a 3 versus 3 situation now in the freezing picture, and the players are coming, of course, because this is F-League playoffs, players are coming to track their players, but sometimes those 3 versus 2s can become even worse if many players go towards the same player. So you never want that to happen, that many players are moving towards the same player, because then that 3 versus 2 will multiply and the situation will be even worse. It can turn out to be 2 versus 1 or 2 versus 0 even. And then one question for your players and coaches to reflect on. Who is the most dangerous player in this picture, and who are the 2 players that should be taken out by your defenders, and who is left for the goalie? And then defending those 2 versus 1 situations, these are the worst of all these examples: 4 versus 3, 3 versus 2, 2 versus 1s. There is only 1 player to pass, right? So it is quite an easy situation to solve for the attacker, and there's only 1 defending, lots of space. So the collaboration between the only defender in it and the goalie gets emphasized even more. So it is not a 2 versus 1 directly, it is sort of a 2 versus 2 when you take into account the goalie in that. Responsibilities need to be very clear. What player belongs to the goalie, and what options should the defender take out on that situation. There is no absolute truth. on what the defender should always take away. Like that they should always take away the pass. Some teams play in that way, but there are many different ways also. Right answer for your team is related to the agreements between the defenders, coaching staff, and the goalie, and the strengths of the goalie. Some goalies like to take the shooter always and are comfortable of moving forward from the goal and thus decreasing the shooting spaces, and in that case the player without the ball, attacker without the ball, belongs to the defender. And some goalies even want the defender to move towards the shooter and they want to face the player without the ball, so they are more comfortable on moving sideways and then saving those horizontal pass plus one-timer shots. And choosing a half option is always the worst when you're defending. You need to take clearly something out. If you make a half option or a half decision, or should I go or should I go there, that will be a mistake always. There we saw a little example of miscommunication or mistake by both of the defender and the goalie in that situation. It wasn't clear of what they were doing. If the goalie likes for the defender to drive to the player with the ball, you need to make sure that the shot does not come through and you are able to drive the player to the outside board, so then goalie can focus more on the player that is coming without the ball. Of course, goalie needs to be prepared for the direct shot, but if he has to take full responsibility of both of those players and scan fully those both players at all times, it is way harder for them to concentrate into saving one action. And whatever you do as a defender, are you taking the pass, are you taking the shot away, you need to do it with a very solid manner. And in that previous clip again, it was sort of a different situation, a harder situation. There were some back checkers coming and tracking their players, but it still was a 2 versus 1 situation where the defender was at first closer to one player, but then he decided to move to the player that had the ball before passing to the back post. So this opened up a hard decision-making situation for the goalie, because the goalie had to focus on the player that had the ball. Before he passed the ball to the back post, he had to focus quite much on that because there was such a big delay of that defender coming to the situation. But still, he had to move to the side post, but did not have enough time to do it. So when you are defending, who is the most dangerous player, and take a total decision. Is that blocking the shot? Is that going to the ball? Is that covering the pass? Or what is it? But you need to make a total decision on that and help out the decision making of the goalie. So the options for the defender in the 2 versus 1 situation are playing the attacker without the ball man to man or player to player, which means that you shift to the player that is without the ball, attacking without the ball, stay near that player and follow it around from inside the goal, and you don't focus at all to the player with the ball. Some teams play 2-on-1s like that. Playing more towards the attacker without the ball, but covering the passing lane primarily. If you are positioned a little more to the central line, so you are not playing man-to-man on that attacker without the ball, but you are covering the passing lane, you are also limiting a little bit of that angle where the player with the ball can carry, so they don't have the full open net of the center of the pitch open in that moment, because you're positioned in that way. Another version is that you are driving to the player with the ball into a narrow angle and letting the goalie face the attacker without the ball. And then there needs to be some sort of intuition as well. If the attacker stumbles up with the ball, you can then release yourself from that agreement and situation how you are used to playing it and then intercept the ball. So you cannot do that only that rigidly that you only hold on to those agreements. If there arises a situation where you can intercept the ball and get it faster, of course do that. But the most important thing is to clarify these things between the coaching staff, goalie, and your defenders, and agree how you want to take those situations on and what fits the best to the goalie's strengths. That was our video for today. Thank you for watching. Get your mates and colleagues to this channel and get them subscribed so they will know when new content arrives. Like the video. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe and follow us on socials. Please ask anything from me in my socials about Floorball and we can discuss about it. But hey, thank you. Have a good training week. Bye.